Hey, how's it going everyone? I hope that you're all having an amazing day. In this video, we are going to go over the Ashes of Creation October dev stream that just happened today. We will be summarizing some of the main points of the stream, and we will also be showcasing the winners of the glorious Gourd contest because they were truly some insane carvings. If this video helps you out at all, then help me out by hitting that like button. Also, we are going to be streaming Ashes of Creation to no end when it finally comes out, so if you guys are interested in that, then be sure to go and give my channel a follow. The link will be on the screen and in the description, but let's go ahead and cut this plug and get right into it. So the main thing that Ashes of Creation showed off today was a glimpse into what some large-scale PvP will look like. Steven, the creative director, mentioned before the clip played out that one of the most taxing processes of running an MMORPG is the amount of processing that it takes to render a lot of different people in one small area. He also mentions that the team has made some real progress with how they managed to make all this work, which is why they wanted to show off this medium scale PvP battle. There were like 20 people in Steven's party that were all grouped up in one area, and I have to say that the animations here looked really smooth. Though this is only 20 people, you can see, like for example, when this heal over time effect is happening, that it is in sync with the entire group, and it was actually rendering really well. I also feel the need to mention something else that Steven said, which is that the effects that you guys are going to see on screen in this battle and now are what he describes as first pass effects. He noted that some development teams usually use what they call gray boxes on the first pass of effects. Gray boxes meaning literal gray boxes or some type of placeholder of some kind being used rather than the finalized effect. But Steven said that as a team they decided not to do that and instead have decided to go with an over-exaggerated form of the effects for the first pass. They do this in order to really get a better feel for what they want the spell to look like overall, and he mentions that these will be gone over with a second or even third pass in order to bring the effects down into a more manageable state. Because you will see here in a minute that some of the spells are incredibly over-exaggerated, but let's go ahead and cut all of this preface and go over what the team showed off with this castle siege. PvP is my bread and butter when it comes to MMORPGs, so I was really excited to see this, and from just a base perspective, I think that this shows a ton of potential, and it looked really good and it seemed to be smooth from a gameplay perspective. The critical side of me gets a little bit worried after seeing Steven get seemingly one-shot, and then even after he jumped up to 9k health using his dev tools, he was still getting dropped down to 7,000 health pretty quickly. This doesn't really worry me though, because Ashes of Creation is still in development and is going to go through iterations of damage amounts and health amounts and whatnot. But it is worth pointing out that Steven got slapped here in this fight. And this brings me into another point that I am curious about, which is how much of the PvP is going to be full loot. I, for one, am a big advocate for full loot games that provide a risk versus reward system in PvP. And I'm just wondering what, if anything, is to gain from partaking in PvP outside of Castle Siege instances. For example, am I going to be able to go out and gank a resource gatherer for some of their resources? I know that Ashes of Creation is planning on setting up a system where if I were to gank too many innocent people, then I would become marked and would essentially have a bounty put on my head. From what I understand, once a bounty is on a player's head, if that player were to then die, they would lose all of their gear. So does that mean that the players without bounties have no risk of losing anything? Even if they don't lose their gear, would they lose any of their resources? I'm just wondering all this because if there is no reward for PvP and just the risk of ending up getting bountied, then why would you go out and partake in player versus player? Let me know down in the comments if you guys know the answer to any of these questions. But one other thing that I wanted to point out in this PvP battle was What exactly was going on with this Daystrider? Was this just someone coming back into the fight, charging in on their Daystrider mount? Or was this some sort of spell? Because this lava thing on the ground that was coming in behind it or in front of it made it look like some sort of spell, and it just charged in and just absolutely just disappeared. And none of this is really important to what they were showing off, but let me know down in the comments if you know at all what that was about. Overall, I think that they showcased exactly what they wanted to, which is a smooth 40-person PvP experience that stayed pretty smooth, even considering that the effects are being over-exaggerated. Moving on though, they showed off the winners of the glorious Gourd contest, and I want to also showcase and congratulate these winners because they were truly some incredible and amazing carvings. Let me know if one of these is yours and you didn't want me showing it for some reason, because I will go back and take it down, but I think that these are so good that they just need to be showcased in as many places as possible. I am going to just run through these in a slideshow fashion with some background music, so sit back and prepare to be amazed. I also want to bring up the fact that these guys are running a 24-hour charity stream, which is going to give people the opportunity to win some extra alpha keys. So be sure to go and follow their Twitch channel and their Twitter. Check these guys out to not miss out on that 24-hour stream. I don't know off the top of my head, but I will have a graphic on the screen. I think they are streaming November 6th through November 7th. I could have that wrong. I will have the graphic on the screen. One last thing that I want to go over in this stream though is the part where Steven and Jeff were talking about balancing. I think that this is an important topic which they explained very well here. So we are just going to go ahead and roll the clip where they go in depth on how they plan on going about balancing the 64 classes.
When it comes to classes and PvP, but it's kind of like your design theory on designing for that. Obviously, I know we have a lot of people who are interested in PvP, and balance is kind of a lot of people's concern with 64 classes.
I mean, yeah, it's a big, huge, gigantic thing to work on, right?
Yeah.
But the way that we're approaching it philosophically is not 1v1 combat, right? Like that would be an impossible thing for us to really do, and it's not really a direction we want to go with the game, right? We're really focused on sort of mass PvP, right? So not like one-on-one kind of encounters, not really even party versus party encounters, but like these big, fights around nodes, these big fights around castles, these big fights around caravans. So a lot of it is trying to figure out ways and balancing ways for classes to work together synergistically, so that like your focus as a team is building out the best the comp that synergizes best for what you've got. And we balance it that way. So we balance party on party, we balance party group on group, and sort of the different configurations of those things. So we look at it more as a macro scale balance problem rather than like a micro scale balance problem. So there will certainly be classes, that, especially depending on your builds, because we are a build focused game, that just blow other comps out of the water. And that's okay for us. But what we do want is for parties to be relatively well balanced, as long as they've been built sort of with the encounter in mind.
Right, and just to expand a little bit on that, we have specific terminology when referring to archetypes and classes. Classes are the combination of your secondary archetype with your primary archetype, right? And a base archetype is one of the 8 base archetypes that we have present: the 4 martials and the 4 arcane, the ranger, fighter, tank, and rogue, and the cleric, bard, mage, and summoner, right? So those are the 8 archetypes. Now, when you look at balancing, as Jeff was saying, we kind of focus more on the group and even larger as a balancing aspect. And what that means is we're adhering to kind of the Holy Trinity principles. And at the same time, that represents kind of a rock, paper, scissors balance between individual archetypes and classes. So it's understood that some classes and or archetypes on a 1v1 basis will be disadvantaged or will have the advantage. And that we're okay with that, because again, our focus is the larger engagements. And with that being said, the active skills stem from your base archetype. So from a design standpoint, even though augments do radically change the way your active skills kind of provide you abilities, there's still a primary focus on the base archetype itself and not the 64 whole classes, so to speak.
Yeah. So that's a really good point, right? Where we're not really talking about 64 true classes. We're talking about 8 classes with 64 variants. And again, like how you build those variants kind of depend on where you spend your skill points. You could lean more into your subclass or lean less into your subclass depending on where you're putting your points. So there isn't as much variance between the 64 classes as you might expect, right? It's not like there are, 64 different versions of, I don't know, like radically different classes. There are 8 classes, 8 archetypes that are all, they have the same chassis, but then they have different augments put on top of that to sort of change the performance of that chassis, to right. Make a car analogy.
Or caravan. Sorry.
Or caravan now.
Awesome.
There is still a ton of stuff that happened on the stream, including a Q&A, which I highly suggest you guys go and watch. I will link their video and their Twitch channel in the description, but that is all of the information that I personally wanted to touch on, so that is all from me. I hope you all have an amazing day. I'm out.